Yeah, we can go live.
We are live, Divya.
Thanks, Hardik.
Hi, Hardik.
Sir, how are you?
Fine, fine.
All right, speaker, shall I go ahead?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, sure.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm Divya Navle, 2003 A4PS297, and I'm very excited to welcome you all here today for a very special fireside chat as a part of our lead up to the BITSian Day 2021. Which is being organized by BITSAA International. And this panel is specifically falling under the BITSAA Sahaaya initiative, which is basically an initiative that supports mental health awareness for the BITSian community and beyond. So I am the founder of Sahaaya, and it was launched last year on World Mental Health Day. And so we are almost close to, celebrating a year of the launch of Project Sahaaya. And I think it's the perfect time for us to get together and really talk about the fact that there's so much happening in the mental health space, which is a really good thing. Not just in India, but everywhere in the world, people are rising to the concept and to the topic of mental health and being able to reduce our stigma around it and to be able to truly look at it as something that needs to be dealt with hands-on. As a part of that, I have four trailblazer BITSians today with me, representing 3 startups in the mental health space, all of which have come about in the very recent years. And it's very exciting to see that we have someone like Kailash Gupta sir, who's actually like a veteran, BITSA veteran of sorts, and he's spent so much time in the space as well. But we're also going to learn from people like Saket, Kaustubh, and Fennel, who are young people and really looking at this kind of sector with the most important perspective in helping the youth, especially to drive mental health awareness. So I'm really excited to kind of talk to all of you. And basically, I'm going to start with introducing each one of you. So let me start with, I think, the most experienced, Kailash Gupta. Thank you so much, Kailash sir, for making time. So I'll introduce you briefly. So Kailash Gupta is from BITS Pilani class of 1980 and completed his MSc in instrumentation. He is currently the CEO of a startup called BITSAA, which is an online mental wellness and emotional wellness counseling services portal for individuals, institutions, and corporates. He is also an tech enthusiast and CEO of ETSC Computers Private Limited, providing IT infrastructure solutions companies for the past 35 years in Jaipur. And he really is the life of the BITSA Jaipur chapter, you can say. And not only that, I had the privilege to meet him last year personally during PGM 2020. And so I'm really excited to hear from you, Kailash sir. I really want to know a little bit about your journey. Of course, you've had a wide range of experience, but really want to see how this backup initiative came about and what led you towards it.
Okay. Thank you, Divya, for having me here. First of all, let me congratulate you for this initiative because the word Sahaya, I think it relates to Sahayata. I think to help someone in grief or in someone in need. So that very initiative, very concept of Sahaya is very important when it comes to especially to mental health issues or mental wellness issues. So kudos to you for starting this initiative, which is very much needed in these times. Coming to my journey of Backup, there is a bit of story or history behind it, and I will take this opportunity to narrate that thing as to how did it actually come up. So it is, almost 4 years back that I was sitting with my batchmate Pratik Om, and we were just chit chatting, and we were reading the headlines of newspapers early in the morning, because after a long time he had come to Jaipur, and we were having a good time. And that time in the headlines we were seeing, then the headlines showed that there are every almost alternate day there was a suicide taking place in Kota, which is a IIT coaching hub. As you know that IIT preparation today is largely run by coaching institutes, and lakhs of students go there, and you know that only thousands out of that get into premier institutions like IITs and maybe BITS and such institutions. So there is a large chunk which is not getting admissions, and that's where the whole issue of depression and everything develops, and that's where the students which are not able to cope up, they were actually into depression and committing suicide. So we were thinking, so can we do something about it? So the idea of counseling to students came up, that if we try to, let's say, make an impact even on maybe some percentage of students by putting them into a counseling mode, will it not be good for the students? Because we ourselves have gone through that being engineering students. And we know that what is the stigma attached to expectations of parents when you don't get into premier institutions. And that's where the whole thing starts, because the society expects from every child to get into IITs and like that. So that was the concept which we thought that time, and we conceptualized initially it to be a sort of counseling, career counseling kind of a startup. Later, of course, this was all before pandemic times, but the moment we started conceptualizing it, we thought that such issues are not only in students, but they are almost in age groups, and not only related to career, but it is related to intrapersonal things, career, employment issues, or maybe even after marriage there are certain issues. Within family there are issues, so there is almost all age groups getting affected. So the scope was much wider, and we realized that possibly students is not the only sufferer. The sufferers are the larger chunk of the society, and that's where we thought of widening the scope of this, and we made this as a more of a mental wellness and emotional wellness kind of a online counseling site. And that's where we started working on as to what the structure has to be, and that's where we started building up this website. And the only way to reach out to more people was to go online, and that's where we thought we chose the online methodology, because to reach out physically is a limitation, and the very purpose will not be served. So that's the reason that we conceptualized Backup, and we'll talk about more about it as it goes. But so this is in short the journey so far. I mean, why Backup is this is the story.
Amazing. I think that's just a noble way of thinking about like how we can help more people. You started with looking at students, but went beyond that. And you're right. I think the online aspect, I mean, it might be just because of the pandemic, but truly that is really something that has opened up so many avenues for people to reach out for help. So thank you for sharing your journey. So I'll now like to introduce our next startup speakers. So I have from all years, I have Fennel and Saket. So Fennel Sochak is a recent graduate, in fact, from BITSPilani Goa campus, and he studied computer science and economics. His passion and curiosity to understand the different aspects of mental health and well-being have led him to co-create All Years, which is a community-driven platform for understanding, managing, and upping your well-being. With him is Saket, and honestly, I think I mean, if you have attended any of Sahaaya sessions, you know that Saket Reddy is a strong and vital part of BITSAA Sahaaya. He is a 2014 graduate from BITSPilani Hyderabad campus. As a part of his current PhD at NIMHANS Bangalore, he's trying to understand the impact of meditation on the brain. So his interests lie in mental health, well-being, and ecology. And Saket, remind me if I'm correct or wrong. You are also an advisor for All Years. You're a co-founder and advisor, right? Like the technical advisor.
Not advisor, scientific lead.
Sorry, scientifically. Thank you for correcting me. So yeah, Fennel and Saket, maybe one of you can share, or both of you can share your journey, which led to the initiation of All Years. Like, how did you start up?
Fennel, you can start maybe because you're the first one to start with
Right.
the posting
Right.
BITSian for each other.
Yeah. So obviously, like this is a very recent thing we got into, so we do not have a rich history like Kaila sir has. But yeah, this again started as a phone conversation over the pandemic with a friend, which was like in no way meant to be anything. So we were kind of discussing with my co-founder Saptrishi that what is the thing that stops. No, it kind of stems from what stops you from having a free dialogue. So it was as simple as that, nothing related to mental health. So it was what parts, like what restricts someone from having a conversation that is beyond the superficial level, beyond the barriers that we face every day, with just a open conversation with someone to express yourself. So it everything started from that, as in, so this kind of comes at the intersection of mental health and the ability to express. So there is a very deep concept, or a very famous concept as well, as you can say, is empathy. Like, where is empathy coming into the mental health picture? So our thing started as, where is empathy? How can it be practiced and how can it be implemented for free conversations to go in? And the first step to kind of understand mental health is kind of first to understand the person. So if there is no way to, if there is no empathy in the society, there's no way we can put away our barriers and give our entry point to something new. Because mental health is, again, it's not just like physical health, or like if your leg is broken or you have a fever, take a paracetamol. It's not at that level. So to understand it, there needs to be dialogue, there needs to be conversation. So it kind of started with that, and now we are going towards a wider concept, as in, what after dialogue, what is the things you can do
Right.
to manage and up your well-being. Dialogue is the first step. What next? So from there, we had a post on BITSians for each other, as in, like, we need someone to kind of guide us through or mentor us. So Saket pitched in as like, yeah, let's come over. And we we just met over Facebook, and then we went to Bangalore, and all the conversations began. And from there, Saket will continue, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think you just made it so perfect and set the discussion perfectly for our conversation right now. The fact that dialogue is the first step, and the fact that it has to be done with empathy. I think that's all what Sahaaya stands for as well. And so I'm really grateful that more and more BITSians are doing this in this space. Sakit, so I know that you also reached out to Sahaaya in the same way. So
Yeah.
love to hear your journey going towards All Years as well.
Sure. Thank you, Divya. Thank you so much. So, I've always been passionate about well-being and mental health. In fact, in 2011, in BITS Hyderabad campus, we started Center for Human Excellence, and it did not last for long because of, I think, lack of student motivation and a lot of other factors. So, I've been passionate about well-being for a long time. And then, after my graduation from Hyderabad campus in 2014, I took a couple of years break to explore a lot of aspects about well-being, studying from yoga, meditation, etc. And then I wanted to make sure that my career is aligned to my deep interest. So that's when I applied for PhD at NIMHANS, and then choose a topic which is again aligned with my interests, that is meditation and yoga. And I've been doing my PhD since 2017, and then currently I'm in my final year now. Since last August, like, me and Fennel and other people at All Years, we've been working on this product. So Fennel has beautifully described about what we are trying to do with this one, All Years, empathy. But we have a vision which goes far beyond empathy. So we want to first tackle, we want to clear the misconceptions which are there in the field of mental health. For example, before going further, I just want to throw some light on what health and well-being really means. So, according to the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It's not just the absence of disease or infirmity. So, and well-being and health are very closely linked in the sense that well-being is mostly used from a flourishing point of view. Humans should not be just healthy, but also they should thrive and flourish in whatever they're doing. So, from that point of view, we have this vision of clearing the misconceptions surrounding health, well-being, and also taking this vision to the public. So, as I said, health has many components to it. It's a sense of wholeness one has within. So I'll be talking about few of the components which well-being and health has. It starts from physical, mental, social, spiritual, and ecological. So when we talk about mental health, what we do is we tend to focus only on the mind. Mental health is not just about the mind, but also it is deeply connected to the physical, social, spiritual, as well as ecological aspects. These are all interdependent actually. So only when all these components are in harmony with each other and are in perfect balance with each other do we say that a person is really healthy and living well. So I'll just give a brief history about why this mind body duality came about. So for example, right now mind and body are very separate entities. The way modern medicine works is, if you go to a doctor uh, who's treating, say, diabetes, he would never ask you, are you feeling well? Are you stressed out? He never asks these kind of factors. And if you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, he would never ask you, how are your social connections? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? How is your physical activity? So the psychologists and psychiatrists tend to focus only on the mind, and the allopathic doctors, they tend to focus only on the body. So there is a disconnect between body and mind. So this mind body duality comes from the uh, 16th century French philosopher René Descartes. So he was the person who talked about this mind body duality, and then from then on this dualism persisted, and it's still being practiced in the current form of medicine and the current paradigms. So this is one thing which we want to break. We want to break this paradigm and bring in an integrative approach to mental health. So all these components need to be explicitly told to the public. So we at all years are trying to bridge this gap between the mind and body and bring in a more holistic approach to mental health. And we don't stop there. We go a step further actually. So we also would be focusing on social, spiritual, and even the ecological aspects. So only when all of these exist in harmony, a person is really well. And I'll just give you a small example about depression. Uh, for example, when we talk about depression, people even now just talk about the mind, what's happening at the level of the mind. But uh, do you know that people who are diabetic, they are 2 to 3 times more likely to be depressed, or people who are having cardiovascular disease, they are much more likely to develop depression. At the same time, people who are depressed are much more likely to develop all these metabolic syndrome, starting from diabetes, obesity to cardiovascular disease. So there's a deep connection and link between the body and mind. So the food you eat impacts the mind, your sleep impacts the mind. So this connection is missing right now in the current paradigms. So apart from this, our vision also is to take the science and various tools of well-being to the public, because right now unfortunately the problem is there's a clear science of well-being and we know what makes a person live well, but it is restricted to the laboratories and research centers. We want to take this out to the public and disseminate this understanding in a way which is very simple and people can easily relate to. That's our goal. And so with this overview, we are right now with this empathy thing, we are trying to focus on the mental and social aspects of well-being. And in this part, connection is the most important thing. So a lot of research has shown that human connection is one of the most and one of the fundamental pillars of human well-being, and connection requires empathy. So that's the link between empathy and the larger vision we have for the uh, Olias initiative. Yeah, thank you, Divya.
Thank you, Saket. Um, so we also have with us Kaustav Sharma. So Kaustav is actually a CS computer science graduate from Pilani campus, batch of 2018. He's worked with KPIT, an automotive firm in Munich, for around 2.5 years, and he's just started Glebo along with a BITSian co-founder as well, Akshat Johri. So to tackle the issue of mental health in India. So Kaustav, really excited to hear from you about your journey and how you came about to learning about mental health and really starting this initiative.
Mhm. Thank you so much for organizing this fireside chat and the entire Sahaaya initiative that you're taking up, Divya. I think it's a really great cause, and I think it will go a long way for BITSA and BITSkins in general. With that said, I think the way we came across the idea or concept of mental health was quite different from how Saket or how Mr. Kailash or Fenil had come across it. So when me and Akshat were talking about doing a startup, so we already had a goal in mind that we wanted to do a startup, and our fundamental goal was to work in an area of social impact. So when we looked across areas within India that had a lot of scope for good social impact, we came across education, upskilling of sorts, waste management, and we also came across health as a major gap in in the ecosystem. So essentially now this transcends both to physical and mental health. But we saw that while there are a plethora of services available already for various kinds of physical health, you would see Practo or Visit and so on. They all have telemedicine nailed to the T, and there are a large variety of services already available to cater to that segment. We saw that in contrast, mental health had been left behind with a huge, with a huge gap in the treatment, so to say. And we saw that that was something that could not be filled with the services that were existing. And so we thought that our energy could be best utilized in this particular subsection of social impact. And so that was how we came across mental health. So both Akshay and me, we are both graduates from computer science. So actually we did not have any background in mental health, and it took us quite a while to understand the entire ecosystem, from every perspective, down from a psychologist one to an individual or an end user. So as I'd say now we are at a point where we understand well why the problems that exist in the current systems do. And our goal with Vivo is to create a one-stop platform that could eliminate all these platforms, all these problems for the current and future generations. And with Vivo, we want to, as Saket touched upon, mental health is currently looked upon in isolation, which is absolutely not the case. People think that the absence of mental health issues equates to mental wellness, which is
Yeah.
absolutely not the case, because mental languishing can also persist because of reasons like personal relationships, stress, burnouts, and so on. So essentially, there is a huge gap between an absence of mental health issues and a flourishing state of mind.
Yeah.
And even though there's a significant percentage of population which faces mental health issues, there is a huge segment which faces mental wellness issues, and both of these segments are often not aware of the fact that they do in fact suffer from such things. So I think the challenges we are looking to tackle with Vivo are that of awareness and of accessibility to such services. And for that, we are creating an online platform which could work for both behavioral and mental wellness, and basically make mental wellness more accessible and social for everyone in India.
Awesome. So my favorite part of that story is that you actually went scouting for problems to create
Yeah.
impact, and then you zeroed in on mental health. I mean, that just shows like how important that aspect is and how it's really the need of the hour. And so
Yeah.
that's definitely my favorite takeaway. Thank you for sharing that journey, and thank you all of you for sharing this journey. I think it's important for us to understand that we all have such deep passion on this topic, and that's why we are all here together and trying to make a difference in people's lives. So now I'll kind of move towards kind of a panel discussion where I'll put forth some questions, and this can be free flow. So I would welcome any of you to speak up and share your thoughts and opinions or suggestions, whatever you wanted to share on any particular question. So I think one thing that we have clarified, or was clear from what we heard from each of you, is that the whole mental health idea has actually boomed in the last few years, right? And there's a lot happening in the space suddenly. So the sudden boom in mental health discussions, maybe fueled by the pandemic or whatever, do you think it's a wave or is it here to stay? And if it is not here to stay, then what can we do to make it here to stay? Any thoughts, ideas?
Shall I?
Yeah, Kailash sir.
Also go on.
No, sir, please go on. I'll carry on after you.
Okay, no problem. So, Divya, my take on this, mental wave, which you call it, it is obviously, boomed up, you can say, or exponentially it is increased in pandemic times. But, I think mental issues or mental wellness issues are age-long issues. So long as this humanity has come, the emotions have come. And the emotions are there, the feelings have come, and there are intrapersonal issues, no matter they were subsided. So a lot of it was because you didn't see them coming up because they were all subsided. They were the society which was subsiding them, and people were not very comfortable in talking about these issues.
Yes.
So one was that stigma, which is prevailing rather. I won't say was, because it is still prevailing. So there's a mental stigma which was holding this mental issues to come up. That's number one. That's my and the number two thing is that yes, of course, when pandemics like situations are there, or there are issues which are unemployment issues in certain times, there is a recession in certain times. But that time also the things speak up. So of course, in pandemic time it is peaked up, but nevertheless, now since the awareness is growing up, we and you are talking about it. Similarly, there are various NGOs which are talking about it. There is central government which has formed a special mental wellness cell. There are state governments which are talking about it. So the awareness overall is trying to grow, and because of that awareness, the issues which were actually subsided, they are being vocal. So I won't say that this is just a pandemic time wave or like that. It will have its own stabilization period because society is here to stay, people are here to stay, emotions are here to stay, and intrapersonal relations and all these things, they are here to stay. So it will go on. I mean, it is part of life.
Yeah, thank you for that input. Definitely. I think we've already reached like in the curve of like the opening up of people with their emotions and thoughts. I think we're reaching that graph where now you cannot stop. Like it's done its breakthrough now.
Yes.
Yeah. Kaustubh, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, one more reason why.
Sorry, Saket. I went to Kaustubh. I'll come to you shortly.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Divya. As I was saying, essentially, if we look at why mental health, isn't at the state it needs to be, I think the biggest factor is the intangibility of mental wellness. Compared to physical issues, it's very hard to perceive somebody else's state of mind or the state of mental health, and quite often our own too. So, that inability to perceive the existence of mental health issues is what causes the biggest friction in communication or, in talks about mental health on between any two people. So I think as public conscience and public knowledge increases, people, in the earlier times, people had no idea that the universe was surrounded with atoms. They thought it was an ether-like substance which filled or pervaded the entire atmosphere. So that was because they had no idea or they had no knowledge of the true reality. Similar to that, if we compare it to our current scenario, people, often mistake physical symptoms for, physical issues when sometimes they are symptoms of psychological diseases and so on. So, the intangibility of mental health issues is what's causing the biggest blockade, I would say. Now, given the pandemic era, in the extended periods of lockdown, I think public psyche everywhere took a huge boost in favor of mental health issues because everybody was able to understand firsthand what going through such a phase feels like. Because
Yeah.
almost all demographics across the world were subjected to months of lockdown, and so as humans are naturally outside creatures who are meant to roam outside, being locked up, cooped up inside for such extended periods took a toll on the mental health of almost everyone, and they were able to understand firsthand what mental health issues can feel like and what their actual ground reality is, instead of hearing it from someone else and then having to decide whether that person might be telling the truth or not. So I think this tangibility has definitely increased globally. And if you look at mental health as a ladder, so to say, at the top of which we have utopia, then different demographies across the world stand at different rungs of that ladder. You have developed countries like USA and Europe, which essentially are much higher on this ladder. And then you have developing countries which rank lower on this. So while all the rungs of this ladder took a boost due to pandemic, I think in the near future there will be a little more, calming down of this wave, because I think generally public conscience just tends to work that way. It won't stay very long, but the boost won't entirely go away, I think. And in the long term, as knowledge and awareness increases, the trend is definitely towards more understanding and more focus on mental health.
Absolutely. I think the most important point that you add, and I think Saket would actually kind of expand on that, is the fact that, we didn't have enough, like, way to look at it and say that, this was a mental issue, right? We didn't have
Yeah.
enough tests, or like we didn't have enough criteria or something. Nobody was looking at it. But now,
Hmm.
I think now we can look at something and say that, okay, this could be like something, that's caused due to like depression or
Hmm.
anxiety. These were not words that were used in, even like if we went to a doctor. I think it was only like 5 years ago. So I've personally had anxiety and a lot of mental well-being kind of support over the years that I've received. And I don't think it was until 2015 when a doctor really asked me, why can't your symptoms go? Uh, you know, what is in your head?
Yeah.
Why are you not letting this go? And simple. And that was the first time a doctor actually said that to me. I was shocked.
Hmm.
I kept thinking that my physical symptom is physical. When he
Yeah.
finally was like, I can't give you another new set of medicines. This is not going to fix you unless you fix your mind. It's not going to get fixed. And then I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I need to change my criteria. I need to change my direction. So thank you for that. Sakit, you wanted to add to this?
Yeah. Actually, one reason why this is happening is because even the medical curricula, the way they teach right now, it's like that. They don't focus on the mental aspect, especially the doctors. They don't give any importance to that aspect. And psychologists, they don't, psychologists and psychiatrists, they don't give much emphasis on factors other than the mind. So I think a lot of things can change if the uh, course curricula and education curricula are, systematic changes are brought to that. And one more reason why this boom in mental health discussions is because uh, there's an increased awareness among the public about what causes mental health issues, and how one can prevent oneself from such issues. So in NIMHANS, we have an entire department which is creating awareness. It's called as Mental Health Education Department. So it's been doing a lot of outreach activities in different languages actually, to create awareness among the public, not just even the rural public, not just the urban areas. So this
Got
kind
it.
of outreach programs are needed the most right now. And also, if you see, if you follow the news, a lot of public figures are coming out these days. They're disclosing what they're going through. Recently, Ben Stokes came about saying that he's taking an indefinite break from cricket to focus on his mental well-being. So such kind of things are needed because people know that this issue is a real issue, and it's a relevant issue. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, Ben Stokes, we have Simon Biles, we have
Simon Biles.
Naomi Osaka. We have had so many people just, come forward. And I think also Michael Phelps also came forward saying, how much he struggled with depression. And we even know that Abhinav Bindra went through depression after he won his Olympic gold. So I think slowly and steadily, I think the fact that, even people of that stature coming out and sharing their journeys is
Yeah.
allowing people to open up with their story. So I think, this is a wave that cannot be stopped, basically, with the science, with the awareness, with the stories. And so, thank you for that, Saket. All right, I want to move to a little bit discussion on the structural issues that you are facing, especially as you go about building your startup. Mainly, this is about stigma and culture around the issue of talking about just mental well-being in a country like India. It's something that's kind of like awkward, something I mean, it's always like pushed under the rug, and it's definitely something like almost a generational issue as well. So I want to kind of see if some of you wanted to share any structural issues that you have shared, and how you're trying to overcome this aspect.
Um, I could go about it.
Sure,
That's
go ahead.
So essentially, how early stage startups typically grow is word of mouth. Word of mouth goes a long way, especially when you are in stages when you have only a handful of customers. But as you said, mental health, particularly due to its sensitive nature, often forbids or prevents people from conveying that same level of gratitude through word of mouth conversations with their friends. So what ends up happening is that the reach that you would have otherwise received is often sometimes limited. And
Mhm.
while you could try to target individuals, it's very hard to convince people at a grand scale of India while being an early stage startup. So the approach we are taking is we are starting with institutions first, because we think that stakeholders at such institutions have a much better idea of mental health and much better awareness. And essentially, they would understand the benefits that all their stakeholders could get from a better mental health facilities for them. So essentially, if we take the example of corporates, then a decision maker, a senior HR would know that his or her employees would function well if their families are in better mental health state, if they are in a better state of mental health, and if there is a harmony between the entire organization in terms of what's important and in terms of what's defined as being healthy. So
Yeah.
the same case can be extended for universities like BITS or schools and colleges and so on. The stakeholders, decision makers like the VC at BITS Pilani or principals at local schools, they would be the ones who understand the benefits that mental illness could provide to parents and children and whoever the other stakeholders might be, and they are the ones who need to be convinced of the efficacy. And we think that once we branch out through them, we'll be able to reach out to a much larger number of people that would have otherwise been able to.
Yeah.
So that's how we
Yeah.
are going about it.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's really a way to go to create impact on a very large scale, and I think that focuses specifically on the youth. When you go to
Yeah,
institutions, corporates, it's mainly again going towards the younger generation, and I think that's a very key space. And I think that will be something amazing, especially to start with. Cool. Anyone else wanted to add in about the stigma and overcoming the culture?
Yes, I think I can add here a bit. Uh, See, the entire problem of mental wellness is not about the mental issues only. It is something which is a stigma which is attached to it. So we have to have a two-prong approach for this. And I think the first approach would be to somehow bring people out of this stigma that they should be, kind of open to talk about this. So when Kaustubh talked about it, I think that approach is fairly right. The one is that the institutions, the corporates, they should incorporate this as an important part of their, either employee assistance programs or in institutions, if we talk about, it should be part of their curriculum, wherein they should address this issue as a large, because this is going to affect studies, this is going to affect everybody in their college if this persists. So larger point of view, it has to come from the corporate and institutions heads, as well as there has to be a larger awareness to bring that stigma out of the individuals, because that's equally important. Until unless individual is able to open out that I have some issues and I need to tackle it, I don't think we can bring a big change, because anything enforced will not work. So it has to be a two-way approach. Bring in as many awareness programs as possible so that people are free to talk about this as a normal physical kind of a symptom. Like if you have cough and cold, people should be able to talk about a normal mental problem within family or
Yeah.
within society, in between friends, without being judged by each other. So that atmosphere has to build up, and that has to build up from the society cultural point of view. And on top of it, if you have programs which are coming in from institutions which encourages people
Yeah.
to open up again, or from corporates in form of EAP programs, I think that is the fundamental change that we should bring in, and that's going to.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And I know that Buckup has been doing a like a great work in like doing webinars on a monthly basis. I believe it's monthly. And you have been a great support also with Sahaaya as we're doing monthly webinars. So the purpose of these webinars is mainly to kind of raise that awareness, like you said, and bring it at the structural level of the society and say that, hey, we are all talking about it, so you can also talk about it. And I think that is something that's made a huge difference. I see a hand raised and there's a question, but I apologize that we'll be taking the questions only at the end. So I have a few more questions. When we finish the panel discussion, there'll be a 10 to 15-minute Q&A round. So definitely we'll get to the questions as well. Anyone else wanted to add, especially about stigma?
So it was
Yeah,
not a question actually I raised my hand about. It was about what you were discussing, awareness in institutions and organizations. So that just reminded me that in my school, we had a counselor, psychologist available at all times for us. And whenever we all moved to, ninth or 10th, when you had this pressure of boards in schools, we all had a famous psychologist in Delhi. I can't remember her name now, but she would come and organize a 2-day camp for all the students in that class. And we would all take some questionnaire and assess our mental health. And if some students did have some problems, so they were offered extra counseling free of charge. It was all given from the school. So I was just going to add, so because of that, I have been aware of my mental health since beginning. So awareness starts from school, not just later on in institutes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add
That's a great point. So Dolly and I were actually on campus together at the same time. She was a master's student when I was in undergrad. And the fact is there was no mental health support. Like we didn't have a counselor on campus at that point or anything available. But as of today, we have Empower cells available on each of the campus. The Hyderabad launch just happened yesterday. So now BITS can at least tell that, we have something qualified. I'm sorry, I cannot take more speakers. I want to move forward with the panel discussion, Aarti. So we'll have that conversation later if you wanted to share something. But thank you for that input, Dolly. We really need to start at a young age. And I think that's a part of my story as well. And I've shared my story a few times over the Sahaaya webinars that, I did not really get any kind of support. When I was at BITS, I was basically diagnosed wrongly and I was told I have migraine when I had headaches and, like this lethargy because of depression. And it was not until much later when I developed panic and anxiety attacks is when I was in the US and I got the kind of like support to say that, okay, this is what it actually is. So I think it really adds to the point that, start young, it really adds to that. And I think Saket also has been a huge proponent of this, start doing yoga and meditation and all that at a very young age, and our approach at Sahaaya as well is that it has to be preventative. It's not something like a symptom that you need to deal with at a later point, but it has to be preventive and holistic in nature, so that we are looking at counseling and therapy as really the last step in the process. So that's
Yeah,
something
that's
very
very
important.
important.
Yeah.
It's very important to focus on the prevention, because right now there's a huge disparity between the people needing therapy and the people providing therapy. So there's no way we can address this huge gap without focusing on the prevention efforts. So if we focus on the prevention efforts, starting from school to colleges to universities, what happens is the person needing the therapy most would receive it. Therapy, the therapist's hands would be a little more free to handle such extreme cases, and that's a very important thing which we need to do, actually, the prevention thing.
Yep. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. I want to ask the speakers if there have been some key challenges in their journey so far. Like, you're starting up, you have no idea where to start, especially because mental health startups have just really boomed recently. And the fact that, as in did you have any personal challenges, like maybe there are young entrepreneurs here, like did your parents have an issue that you would take a cause which actually people are afraid to talk about? I'd love to know if you had any personal challenges like this that you were able to overcome.
Yeah, I had no issue because I've been in this field. So
Sorry.
so I have had no issue because I've been in this field for the last 4 or 5 years. So
Right.
personally, I don't feel much challenge, actually. Yeah. Finally, you're talking.
Yeah, so from the challenge point and from the amenities point, it's been a great community overall. Like the BITS network is, I cannot thank it enough. Like meeting people is buttery flow. Like you want to catch up on a conversation, collaborate on something. It's like the amenities are like superb. So Saket and I connected on BITSians, obviously. So that bond kind of stays there. But from the execution point, there have been challenges in this space because like everyone is like, let's talk about therapy, let's talk about talk about mental health, talk about mental health. But like, who's there to listen? Like, are you equipped to listen? If I come to you and talk about my feeling and things, would I trust you to talk to you? Like, help seeking is not in our primal behavior. We as mammals do not admit weakness.
Yeah.
So if I trust you, or are you with if I trust you with that you have the right skills to understand me, then I will talk to you. But people are not talking about the skills to understand another person. So if you do not understand the other person by the dialogue, how are you able to even direct them towards the right resources, or push them to or tell them to get counseling or therapy? So the fundamental thing is that, are we able to understand each other? Are we open to listen to anyone, and have the dialogue going? Because in the physical space, you have a thermometer that says your temperature is high, take a paracetamol. How do
Mhm.
you measure mental health? It's through dialogue. And if the dialogue is just one way, I speak, we have no clue. We talk
Yeah.
about mental health like these are the problems, these are toxic. So the person on the other side is also important, who is listening. So this gap is bridged by empathic conversations, and the literacy of mental health mostly should happen through dialogue. I can flash 10 boards to you and tell you
Yeah.
this, but if you do not engage in conversation, you cannot understand it. So that is a very thing that we are trying to focus on, as in the other side, like someone to express to. Like, do you have someone to express to who's equipped with the
Mhm.
skills? uh, yeah, so it's like the first aid. Is first aid like, is there first aid for mental health? So yeah,
Absolutely.
so that is, yeah, that
Awesome.
is.
So, along with empathy, what basically needs to happen is you build that trust, and you need to start with that empathy. You start the empathy, you start building that trust, and you create that trust. And I think somebody who can, essentially have those kind of resources to create the empathy and trust. So, we essentially, even if we are not struggling with our mental well being, what we could do is always learn and find more resources that we can use to become these channels of empathy and trust. So that's something really amazing, and I know that all yours is also looking at doing that, especially, right? That's the holistic vision. So thank you for that perspective, Anna. That was really, really amazing. And I think that ties into Arti's comment. She's written in the chat, mental health is a lifelong process and starting at a very early age is necessary. So as Dolly mentioned as well, starts with having safe spaces right from home to discuss the emotional and mental issues without the fear of judgment or ridicule. So that's basically how you build trust. You create a safe space without fear of judgment and ridicule, and build the trust, and only then that person is able to open up and truly share how they're feeling. So yeah, I think this is such a great conversation. I'm really enjoying everything that's coming. So thanks, Arti, for that input as well. All right. I think we are like really, cutting close to like time. So I think one question I wanted to ask specifically is, how are you dealing right now because of the pandemic, the challenge of lack of human touch in online settings? As it is supposed to be like a critical thing, right? I think we also, it was touched upon that, the fact that you have to create a safe space. So how is that creating safe space online a challenge, or how is it actually not a challenge? Can you share some insights on that?
I'll barge in there. On that front, firstly, I'll add to the challenges that is there with the online counseling, and the challenge that startup like us which faced, because I'm not into a mental wellness domain. I basically come from IT consulting, as well told by you, and most of my time to date has gone into IT, building IT infrastructures. So to build up that a startup which is totally away from my segment was a big challenge. And the more I get into it, there are more challenges. And the biggest challenge that is, that was prevailing in front of me is that in psychology, there are norms are still not properly defined. When you talk about psychologists, there has to be a master's degree,
Yeah.
and that only can be allowed as a counselor. Then you have MPhil, then only they are allowed to deal with the disorders. And only when you have PhD, a kind of a thing, or a doctorate, a kind of a thing, or a doctor into it, then you can prescribe. So there are so many things attached to psychologists. Straight away, you cannot onboard for just like, straight a counselor. You have to study as to which type of qualification would be rightly suitable for what kind of counseling. So that is a major challenge. One has to study clearly what are the norms, who should be able to give counseling session, because it is the trust will build up only that. And I define this process into a three part. One is that awareness that we talked about.
Yeah.
And second is that the trust with the counselor has to build up, and that will build up only through demo workshops, through awareness webinars, where they will know that, okay, this is the therapy, this is the way they will be treated, and this is the counselor who will be
Absolutely.
treating us.
Yeah.
So that is very necessary, building up trust, because though I may have mental issues, but I may not be ready to even talk about it to the stranger. But the positive part of it is that you see, I'll just narrate a small story. I went to a psychiatrist for my sister who was who was in depression, because my brother-in-law was no more, and so we took an appointment with a psychiatrist. When I went there, I found that there were 50 people in the line, and the time slot given was something like 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the doctor was supposed to land up at 5, but he landed up at 7. So 2 hours delay. And in 1 hour, then he has to finish up these, appointments. So I was wondering, I mean, people are waiting for hours, and then, after even waiting those hours, they are just getting maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes for conversation. As rightly said by somebody, that unless you have a two-way conversation, you cannot bring to or zero down on the problem. Online counseling is a predefined thing wherein you have a set time, you have a counselor set time, and you are bound to get that time in that scheduled time. So that's the beauty of online counseling. So I would take that as a positive, number one. Number two, you are not very, kind of conscious of, let's say, if I feel like not moving out of the house and still discuss my issues from the corner of my room, I can do that from online, but I cannot do that from the offline counseling. I have to prepare myself. I have to tell somebody that, look, I'm going here. And so there is a stigma attached to it. So I think it is the other way around. I see that as a positive mode. It is to be dealt in a different way. Trust has to build up, of course. That is fundamental.
Absolutely, perfectly put together. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else wants to add something
Yeah.
here?
Can I add on to that?
Yeah.
Great. So essentially, I think, on an online meeting, there are two perspectives. One is that of the patient, and one would be that of the therapist. So if you look at it from the patient point of view, then there is definitely a lack in the level of human connection that you would have felt, given an in-person meeting. But I think that is replaced by the convenience and the comfort of having a session whilst being in a comfortable setting, that of your own home. So I think it offsets the lack of human connection to some degree. And given that in the end you are going to spend 1 hour talking to someone, online, and over a few sessions you're bound to develop a mutual feeling of trust and connection, which is what's important for psychology as a whole, psychotherapy as a whole. So essentially, I think online therapy can be almost as effective from a patient's point of view. The therapists, however, face a different issue. That is, they are often unable to study the body language of a patient and lack essentially what is important, essential information in the form of subtle cues that people make through their gestures or their entire body language, basically.
Right.
And missing out on that is a key facet from a physician's point of view. And I think in the future, all of these are problems which can be addressed. The lack of connection can be dealt with by a sophisticated VR-based solution, for example. And these subtle cues can, of course, be also extrapolated from the camera of the person, of the patient, essentially, and can be
Yeah.
provided to therapists. So these are all problems that can be solved, but they haven't been tackled as of now.
Yeah.
But even with the existence of these problems, it's almost as effective as in-person therapies. So I think the future is pretty bright for online therapy as a mode.
Awesome. Sounds amazing. Thank you for that. Okay. I'm going to move to the next question. I think I want to understand some of the missing ingredients in the current paradigms of mental health. Like we've talked mainly about therapy, counseling, and that's a service that has been really helpful for each one of us, due to the pandemic or before that. But I think I'm looking at, like, for example, I know all yours is looking at a holistic approach. So maybe I want to kind of see how are we approaching especially mental health in a more integrative manner. So any insights that you'd like to share through your initiative of what else you are going to be able to look at in an integrative manner, especially to support mental well-being, going beyond just the counseling format?
Yeah, so I think I briefly touched upon that aspect when I spoke about the Warriors thing. So it's very important, and more people need to talk about this as often as possible, because mental health is not just about the mind. There are also many other aspects involved to it. And in addition to that, we also need to uh, understand that there are many other approaches to mental health. For example, Ayush approaches. Ayush is right now a ministry under the government of India. Ayush stands for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. So there are a lot of approaches in the Ayush form of medicine which have a beneficial impact on the mental health. So this Ayush approaches need to be integrated with the allopathic approaches. So we have an enhanced department called as Department of Integrative Medicine. This is the first in the country where it tries to approach mental health in a truly holistic manner. For example, if a patient comes, they try to understand what a person is going through and then try to uh, give a therapy which is suitable for that person. So it is personalized. Therapy should be personalized and should incorporate all the elements of all forms of knowledge, not just restricting to one particular stream of understanding. So that's the way forward, and more people really need to talk about it.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're doing at Sahaaya as well. The idea is that we should be promoting, like things just make for the matter of fact, exercise, yoga, anything that's basically going to help you get your dopamine levels and endorphin levels going up, that essentially is going to help your mind, right, with the mind body connection. So, and I think that's a very important aspect of mental well-being, especially. And I think I want to actually call upon Kailash sir and talk about, because just yesterday they had a session from Buck Up, which was about dance therapy, and I'm a dancer. So for me, I want to know, I know you're looking at integrative approaches, so I really want your perspective as well.
I think very well. This point is very very important because it is somebody has already spoken. I think Saket has elaborated enough on this, that why mind, body, everything is connected, and you cannot isolate. Okay, I will treat only physical. I will treat only mental issues. I will treat only this, because they are interconnected. If I'm not physically fine, I'm bound to have a mental depression. That how will I get say people in the pandemic scenario, even if I have cough cold, there is a depression coming in. Oh, I'll have to go to hospital. Oh, I don't know what will happen in the hospital. So there is a continuous process, other things attached to it. The yesterday's session that we did was quite a bit related to this, wherein the therapy, which is called dance movement therapy, was trying to connect body with mind. So the way they treat is that there are different kind of self exercises which you can do sitting on in your comfort zone or near within your space, so that you feel that my body is all right to those dance sequences, and you feel kind of refreshed in that moment. It gives you a concentration on yourself, that okay, I'm caring for myself. And that self-care fundamental when it comes, whether it is meditation, whether it is yoga, whether it is your gymming, or whether you're doing a self dancing movements, all these add to your mental wellness. So she had done a specialized course on dance movement therapy, and the yesterday's session was especially designed for how you can treat yourself using dance movements. And many youngsters today, whenever they get into kind of let's say work from home kind of stresses, they just put their volume high of their music system, and they play their best music. So even that works out.
Yep,
So
absolutely. Yeah,
it is
that's very, very helpful. And I think that's very important for us, self-care, and the idea of the fact that, if you're doing like a physical activity, it is not just self-care for your body, but also for your mind. And I think on that note, I'll also share a little bit of a news, because next month we're actually going to be doing a proper dance session, like a BITSian dancer is going to do a dance session as part of BITSAA Sahaya's monthly webinar. So really excited and looking forward to that. So thank you so much for that input. I want to finish, this will be my last question, and then we will move towards at least taking one or two audience questions. So my last question is, from your perspective, what can BITS administration and BITS Alumni Association as an ecosystem do to promote mental health awareness and well-being among students, as well as alumni at large? Your insights, your suggestions to how you think we can truly take this to the next level for the BITSian community.
Yeah, so the first and the most important thing is, which I've been talking about, when students enter into BITS campuses, apart from STEM, we also need to have courses on mental well-being. The most important thing apart from this is, because there's a clear science right now. The only thing is there is this disconnect between the research and the what's happening in the colleges. So this needs to be bridged. And for that, we need to, I think BITS already is doing a lot of activity in this domain. And there's a well-being society which is being planned in the BITS campuses as well. So which will focus on the prevention especially, so that therapy is reserved only for the most needy. So BITS really needs to focus on mental well-being and needs to educate the students that there's a way out, clear way by which one can really know how to handle his mind and body and emotions. So yeah, that's the important step.
Very important point. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a huge aspect that we need to consider. Fenwell, Kaustav, anything you want to add?
I think Yeah, as Saket pointed out, a major issue that BITS as an institution needs to take care of. Apart from that, something to go hand in hand with educating people is also increasing accessibility to these services because, in the present state, even if we account for all BITS campuses or BITS as an institution, I think the level of accessibility for an average BITSian still remains quite, what should I say, removed from
Yeah.
reality. They aren't able to easily go for sessions or they aren't able to reserve sessions. Often, in BITS Pilani campus, at least during the time I was there's just one counselor who used to come in at predefined times. And often, given that it's just one counselor catering to over 5,000 students, you find lack of available time slots and so on. So I think increasing accessibility to help would go a long way in helping with of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. So courses, which is education, and then accessibility. Thank you for that. Yeah. Kala, so you
Divya, I
wanted to add
just
something?
suggest a couple of points. I think I have something in
Sure.
mind because I've
For sure.
been associated with your project, Sahaya. I've been
Yeah.
attending all your webinars, and
Mhm.
I've been doing some activities at BITSA Jaipur level as well. And the one we
Yeah.
did was with Hardik himself, wherein he was also into one of the webinars that we did. So first is the awareness activities, which you are, I think, already doing it, and we should continue doing that. So that is one. Number two, you see, having this suggestion somebody said, Kostu, I think that, or maybe Sake, that we should have institute mental wellness education and like that. But what I feel is that there should be a self-help group, or say we can say group counseling feature with the moderation of a psychologist, either by the institutes or outsourced. It could be outsourced to people like us, or it could be within that institute wherein they should be free to kind of seek a first aid, you can say first hand help, that okay, I'm having
Yeah.
this issue today, what can I do? And maybe their
Exactly.
seniors, juniors, colleagues, they can barge in and then they can suggest. Of course, this has to be with the moderation of a psychologist, which is very
Yeah.
much possible in online mode. It could, like that problem of one psychologist will go away when you're on online mode, so that could be added. And the third thing which can be done is that once you have, let's say, done this, and if you are able to diagnose or maybe come out that okay, a set of 6, 7 people are needing one-to-one counseling, immediately
Mhm.
you should be able to direct them to the relevant psychologist, so that it does not go into a deep dive depression status, and we can avoid those situations which become difficult to then handle. So this is my suggestion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've touched on so many important points. I personally have been in group therapy myself, so I know the benefits of of having a group where you're able to share. Of course, facilitated by a trained psychologist, so who's able to ensure the conversations are not like going too wide apart. But I think it's really helpful, especially for like students at the institute level, because a lot of time they feel lonely being away from home. And I think they are so awkward in like expressing themselves, that until they go to group therapy and think, oh, the same person, this person is having the same thoughts and same feelings as I am, even though this person is like from another part of the country and like doesn't speak my mother tongue or whatever, right? To be able to find that connection through group therapy, like self-help groups, is one of the most amazing things that could happen. So thank you for that input. I think we are trying to basically look at something like this through Empower. So BITSAA Sahaaya has been partnered with Empower for a while now, and we are always in the process of looking at what other ideas can we provide to what they're already doing currently. So this is a great input. So with that, I think I'll close the panel discussion as such. We've gone for an hour. Thank you so much. I'm going to open up the floor for the audience to ask questions. We'll take at least two questions, I'm hoping. I think Naman already has a question. He says, the idea of a course, do you think it should be a mandatory thing for students? Saket, do you want to answer this?
Yeah. So initially we could start with some elective kind of thing, and then over a period of time, it's best to have a mandatory course, because I, from my understanding and from my knowledge of how BITS system works, this is the most important thing that BITS can really do for the student, because it goes a long way. Now, for example, if I look at my BITS life, 4 years, 6 years of BITS life, I wish I had learned this then. That kind of feeling should not be there for the future students. Like, I wish I had learned how to handle my body and mind when I was in
Yeah,
college. Because once it
completely.
goes to the stage of therapy, it's much harder actually. So these things should be handled at the root level. That's the only way, because uh, simply put, prevention is the best thing that one can do for the mental
Yeah.
issues.
Very true.
You literally stole the words out of my mouth, Saket. Like, prevention is better than cure any day. So having the
Exactly.
awareness, having the accessibility to resources, that only comes when you have a sense of what it really is about. Just like we study human biology, and
Exactly.
that's why we are aware enough of our body. I think, just starting with a chapter on mental health in school, and then, making it a full-fledged course at, like, late teens, which is basically at university level, I think would be a massive shift in the society when that happens. Yeah, I think Dolly is sharing something. Do you want to speak, Dolly? I think that's okay. Please do share what you want
It's just
to.
very noisy here. If it's bothering you, let me know.
No worries, go on. It's not
Okay,
noisy.
I'm doing my PhD at University of Amsterdam, and every PhD student has to go through a short course of 6 sessions, which is of 4 hours each, and we go over a lot of things like time management, stress management, mental health issues, and who, like, all the discussion about if we do face something, who to contact. So it's all very it's mandatory. Like, I cannot complete my PhD without completing this course. So some students just do it for the sake of doing it in their last year of PhD, but it is like my supervisor sent everyone in their first year itself. So
Amazing. So this is what we should tell bits to do. Like, one have a course on mental health.
Even the faculty should do that, not just the
Yeah,
students.
yeah, yeah. I think we have, that this is something that we have also discussed, Dolly, that, more than the students, it's also the administration, staff, and everybody involved. Because again, it's about the fact that, the generational needs are different. So it's important to kind of get into the psyche of the current student generation and understand what they are going through, and to be able to facilitate that, especially when they're isolated, living away from home in a hostel. So
but
thank you
also
for that. Yeah.
just one more thing. So my university also does something called health and well-being week every year, and that's not only for PhD students, that's for everyone in the university. And there they have different courses. Most people, especially the seniors, still think it's a waste of time. And
Yeah.
when I go there, it's mostly women who are there, and very some younger students who are like male students are there, but none of the male senior staff ever turns up there. So I don't know if it's if it would also help being mandatory, but it's not mandatory for, like, because also there are lots of people in this university. So if everyone
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
attend it, it
I
would.
think I think that would be something. So I can share my personal experience. So at the University of Pittsburgh, we had something called as a stress-free zone. That stress-free zone was basically a huge area, and where we would have like free yoga sessions. So you had to sign up on the portal beforehand that you can go and do these yoga sessions. Or there's sound healing sessions, like this Tibetan bowl sound healing sessions. And there were particular points, there were massage chairs. So students basically could walk in and actually just sign in and say, I'm going to take up this massage chair for the next 1 hour. Then there's another section where they have like basically these like soundproof booths, where they had like audio devices, and where you could actually listen to meditation and like literally get lost. So the amount of funding, the amount of accessibility that foreign universities have is absolutely uncomparable to what India does. And I think like, yeah, obviously even the stress-free zone, if there are like 30 women in yoga, there are like 3 men, right? That's always going to be the case, but that's more of an awareness issue. But there are more men going to the massage chairs, interestingly, right? So you don't know what works for who. So it's really also about, I think the mental health perspective is that what really works for men doesn't really work for women. What works for a working woman may not work for somebody like, who's essentially like more an artistic woman. We have to kind of provide different avenues and opportunities. And that's what I like about the fact that, if you're online, you can have multiple options. So for me earlier, like when I did in-person counseling, I had one counselor. But now I'll look up online, I can look at reviews and actually tell, okay, if this therapist I did not like really get anything out of the session, I can book someone else. I don't have to go to the same person. The accessibility has increased, right? So similarly, I think if you just kind of do a little perspective shift for people, just like saying that, okay, there's also a massage chair, for, for your mental well-being or whatever, I think they would take that, right? So we have to see what works and really invest there. So I'm hoping that all the all the kind of ideas and solutions that come out of this conversation will somehow lead towards BITS ecosystem having better opportunities for especially students. And I think students is where we are actually focused at this point, but through BITSAA Sahaaya, I think the alumni at large. I think Aarti had one more comment. Do you want to come on audio, video, and share, Aarti?
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I'm in the kitchen, dinner time. So yeah, the point I wanted to share was the mental health as a whole, because it's about holistic well-being. Because if there is no mental health, then there is no health. That is one saying we often hear, and hence the mental health and well-being needs to start very early, which means the parents and carers, which includes the ecosystem that you're talking about, which includes teachers, parents, creche employees, wherever the child is going to go from birth to an adulthood. You need everybody equipped with the knowledge of how to create the safe spaces to talk about emotions, the mood variations that a child would go through, without judging the child, without ridiculing the child, and without pushing the child emotionally away from you. And because that is where the start of stress begins, because the child is unable to express and they're judged. So I think that is where I see a holistic move of mental well-being going, making more impact at a larger circle.
Interesting point. But for that, basically, it's an informed parent. So today's younger generation, as informed parents with awareness, can then be the ones who can basically take care of their children.
Yeah, that is for the next generation.
Curious, so is there a question for any of the panelists here or a suggestion?
I want to add one point to what Aarti said.
Yeah.
So, as she said, it's very important that children are exposed to these things at a very early age, because there is this part of the brain called as the prefrontal cortex. That's the one which is responsible for self-regulation. So that part is the most flexible from the age of 8 to 30. After that, this part of the brain I'm talking about. So after that, what happens is it starts atrophying, and it becomes more and more rigid. So as you progress in your age, it becomes much more difficult to work on that self-regulation than when you are young. So it's very important that students and children are exposed to these tools of well-being at a very early age.
Perfect. Any of you guys are looking at catering to parents or children in your initiatives?
Yeah, we would be focusing. We would be having some interventions for the age groups of 8 to 18 as well.
Awesome.
Because the thing is needs to be done at a very early age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
Yeah, Kaustubh, go ahead.
so, yeah, since the solutions we are creating are for institutions like schools, colleges, secondary education institutions, and just like coaching institutions and so on.
Yeah.
Our solutions also include essentially kind of workshops and education and awareness seminars for stakeholders like parents and teachers and the school administration in general. So essentially, we are looking, going with the approach Aarti said, we are looking to cater to all the stakeholders involved in every institution because yeah, we have similar beliefs that until and unless the entire ecosystem believes or has is aligned in the same manner,
Yeah,
there won't be the required progress on this front. So
perfect.
to this extent, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
Divya, I
that.
have an important
Yeah, 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 go
input
on.
here
Yeah,
because of course this giving children also and maybe that age group is important to into this mental wellness issues, but there is one thing which is online counseling is restricted is that there are regulations wherein you can't have children on to an online kind of a thing
yeah,
without their parent being together with them. So there
yeah.
has to be regulations put in order because of the menaces which are there in the online counseling. So there has to be due diligence of what is the law.
Absolutely. And I think in the context of that, I'll share the personal story of how BITSAA Sahaaya came about as well. So I think I shared briefly in the call earlier as well that I was misdiagnosed when I was studying in Pilani, and that was one of the big reasons why I was moved towards, supporting something happening at the institute. And I visited Goa campus a couple years ago as a speaker for their annual alumni event, and I mean, I could see that, there are people who could use some mental health support. But the fact is that, they're young teenagers, right? And some of them are below 18 in the first year when they come to campus, right? So it's a very sensitive topic. At the end of the day, as an alumni association, we couldn't take charge. We had to depend on the institute because institute is responsible for these kids. And so if we hold the institution accountable to it, our job is done more than anything else. If we start holding these corporates, start holding these institutions, saying that, you're driving these people to become more productive, but not giving them the right ecosystem. And if they can message it correctly, then we are truly supporting that process. And that's what really we did. 1 year of just like, coming up with a vision plan and idea that what do we want to do really here. Like I worked with the founders of BITSA and professors, Kanan sir from Hyderabad and Professor Geeta B ma'am. So all of these people supported me, and really the initiative came out to be that yes, the idea is that if you hold the right people accountable, then things will happen. So I think most importantly, we need to go to our institution and say that you should be doing this. Similarly, I think parents should be held accountable. I think especially to what Aarti is saying, that if parents are held accountable and given the right information and resources, then the kids will flourish. Okay, so I have one last comment here. It says, excellent discussions, compliments to all panelists, points brought about were superb. All the best, carry on the good work. Thank you, Ranjan sir.
Thank you.
So with that, I know we're like really over time, but I want to still keep it to the 1.5 hour mark. Do any of our speakers have any last, like 2 cents, comments, or big insights, or enlightening words? Please share. And I really think this was an amazing conversation.
So I just would like to thank all the panelists. I think young startups, Saket from all year, and Kaustubh, delighted to have. This is an important topic, very close to my heart, and thanks for bringing us on this platform. This is a topic which will go a long way in addressing the current generation issues and especially youth, and that's where I think we should be focusing on, and of course early stage children and all. Kudos to you. Thank you, Divya.
Thank you so much, Kailash sir. I mean, really, really grateful for all the guidance and support you've had for me over the last 1 year, and truly grateful that you're launching this initiative and you have our full support. So looking forward to work with you further. All right. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you, Kaustav. Thank you, Saket. Thank you, Fennel. Thank you, Kailasa. Thank you, Dolly, Aarti, and everyone else for your inputs and comments. This was a wonderful conversation. So the recording will be available on YouTube. So please do share it with your larger networks. I think, as I mentioned already, we'll have a dance session next time. So looking forward to welcoming you all back in a few weeks' time for that session. And happy BITSian's Day next week. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
so much,
thank you,
Divya.
Hardik, as always. Thank you, Hardik, for being the heart of Sahaaya and always, making sure these conversations go smoothly. So thank you.
And all the team members of Sahaaya.
Yes. Not forgetting anyone. Thank you, Saket.
Do that. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.